This is CBN NewsWatch.
And it is Tuesday, June 30th. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. We begin with the worst yet to come. The World Health Organization issuing a warning as COVID-19 infections rise in 32 states. Hospitals across the country are also beginning to reach mass capacity, causing many governors to once again begin closing down their states. Our Caitlin Burke is on this story.
From California to Florida, bars, beaches, movie theaters, gyms, all closing down once again as COVID cases spike in multiple states, including Texas.
We shouldn't have launched the reopening until we had testing and tracing in a better place. So we started too soon.
This morning, 36,000 new cases reported nationwide. Still high, but down from the record of 45,000 on Friday. In Austin, field hospitals are now being prepared after surpassing 70% hospital capacity. A more grim situation in Arizona, where only 13% of ICU beds in the entire state are currently available.
Patients are suffering. They're on ventilators for weeks. Families cannot be here. There are patients begging me not to put them on the breathing machine because they know that they might die and might never talk to their families again.
Tucson doctor Brad Dreyfus says healthcare workers are close to breaking.
It's not like you can just walk away from people you've been caring for in your community or someone you've been caring for in the ICU for 3 weeks. No, you're there, you're in it, you're with them. And that's why it's so emotionally exhausting.
Despite low numbers in New York and New Jersey, both governors are considering a pause to their state's reopening after seeing what's happening in other areas. The World Health Organization says this pandemic is not even close to being over, but is in fact speeding up. The answer? Test, trace, isolate, and quarantine. Meanwhile, hospitalizations have climbed for 15 days in Florida. Starting this morning, masks will be required in Miami and Jacksonville, where the Republican National Convention is scheduled to be held in August. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Meanwhile, the race to find a COVID-19 vaccine continues. Biotech company Moderna Labs is preparing to enter phase 3 of clinical trials as July approaches. The company is seen as the frontrunner for its candidate, mRNA-1273. The U.S. National Institutes of Health estimates the success of the vaccine is about 80 to 90%. Moderna has already begun human trials on a small group of people to see its effects.
It took about 20 minutes to get the vaccine because it came frozen, and they came in with a researcher and a couple of nurses and received it, and they kind of monitored me for about an hour just to make sure there wasn't any immediate reaction. And then I received the second part a month later. And it's interesting because I've become really hypersensitive to anything that might be, if I wake up in the morning and I've got kind of a stiff neck, it's like, is that something to do with the vaccine, or is that just, me sleeping in a weird position at night and waking up? So I'm really kind of alert to all those kind of things.
Phase 3 of testing is expected to include 30,000 participants. Other companies working toward a vaccine are a German biotech company and Johnson & Johnson. Both are in the early stages of phase 2 for their trials. Turning now to the latest on plots that accuse Russia of offering bounties on U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan. 2 new reports say President Trump was briefed on the situation, that intel was included in at least one of his daily briefings. And another source says the intelligence was specific enough. The military and CIA took steps to increase security and surveillance of Russian operatives in Afghanistan, and that senior officials were briefed as well. President Trump and his team claim there was no briefing because the information was not yet verified.
There were dissenting opinions within the intelligence community, and it would not be elevated to the president until it was verified.
Unverified intelligence gets put in front of presidents all the time. It's the nature of intelligence. There's always going to be uncertainty. Doesn't mean it's not important, and it doesn't mean it shouldn't be seen by the president.
The White House briefed 8 GOP members yesterday about the matter and will do the same for Democrats today. The first major Supreme Court ruling in the Trump era is a bitter disappointment for the pro-life movement. As Paul Strand reports, it throws out a law requiring Louisiana abortion doctors to have admitting privileges at an area hospital.
Abolish abortion. Pro-life forces are upset and reeling after the court ruling siding with abortion clinics. The justices wiping the law out wrote, Louisiana's law poses a substantial obstacle to women seeking an abortion. The law offers no significant health-related benefits. The law consequently imposed an undue burden on a woman's constitutional right to choose to have an abortion. Pro-lifers say it could have protected women's health.
When an abortion goes wrong, and we all know that sometimes they do tragically wrong, that women who have sought that abortion still deserve the same emergency care as any other woman.
Chief Justice Roberts again surprised conservatives as he sided with the court's 4 liberals.
We're disappointed in today's decision, and we're disappointed in Justice Roberts, who chose for the abortion facilities and their interests over protecting the health and safety of women.
What we have today is a very bitterly disappointing decision, especially on the part of the Chief Justice for his flip-flop.
The Democratic state senator behind the now-dead law.
Once again, unelected justices have substituted their policy preferences over the clear will of the people of my great state. As long as the Supreme Court continues to meddle in an area that rightfully belongs in the democratic process, women will remain subject to substandard abortion facilities.
Justice Thomas, in a lone dissent, really tackled his fellow justices. He said none of the court's abortion decisions have been supported by the U.S. Constitution, and he labeled them collectively a creation that should be undone. He also wrote, despite the readily apparent illegitimacy of Roe, the court has doggedly adhered to its core holding again and again, often to disastrous ends.
Their job is to apply the words, the original meaning of the United States Constitution.
But the pro-abortion rights group NARAL stated even a court tilted so far right couldn't ignore the concrete arguments and data showing that public health is compromised by these burdensome restrictions on abortion. But now many are asking, is the court actually all that conservative? What this decision shows us is that the conservative majority the court watchers now thought held sway in the court may not be real. Chief Justice Roberts was thought to be a pretty firm conservative vote, but he has sided repeatedly with the 4 more liberal justices. When he does it on an issue as precious to conservatives as abortion, it means probably every issue is up in the air. Paul Strand, CBN News, the Supreme Court.
And a new chapter of the abortion battle begins in Iowa, where Governor Kim Reynolds signed a bill into law Monday requiring that women wait 24 hours before getting an abortion. This bill is set to go into effect tomorrow, but has already been challenged in court by Planned Parenthood. A state court judge must now decide whether to stop the law from going into effect. Planned Parenthood said in its lawsuit filed last week, the bill is unconstitutional in the way it was passed in the middle of the night without public debate. The state's assistant attorney general said there is nothing wrong with quickly passing legislation overnight. With tensions in the Middle East rising, the U.S. envoy for Iran today says an expiring 13-year United Nations weapons embargo on Iran must be continued. During a news conference with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem, U.S. envoy Brian Hook said it must remain in place to secure the Middle East.
It is a danger to Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, and I have visited these countries on my trip to the Middle East, and they are saying the same thing in a very loud and clear voice to the UN Security Council, that the 13-year arms embargo on Iran must be continued. It cannot expire. And I challenge any country to make the national security argument for letting the arms embargo expire.
The UN arms embargo so far has stopped Iran from purchasing fighter jets, tanks, warships, and other weaponry, but has failed to halt the smuggling of weapons into the war zones. Continuing our coverage in the Middle East, U.S. officials in Iran meeting with senior officials say Israel will wait to start annexing parts of biblical Judea and Samaria in the West Bank. The move is part of the President Trump's Middle East peace plan coming to a halt while the country focuses on fighting the pandemic. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu originally said he would bring the plan to extend Israeli sovereignty and law over 30% of the West Bank to a vote as early as tomorrow, the 1st of July. But now it will not happen. Netanyahu spoke on the peace plan during a taped address to the annual conference of Christians United for Israel this week.
It makes clear that the Jewish people have a valid legal, historic, and moral claim to Judea and Samaria, and it supports Israel's sovereignty over the Jewish communities there.
Coming up, a closer look at transgender pediatrics and the risk of hormones and biologically altering a young person's body. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. We'll be right back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug-of-war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline, Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Get the top political news and analysis from Washington on Faith Nation, tonight at 6 Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel.
The new field of transgender pediatric medicine is growing, and it features life-changing medical interventions. CBN's Heather Sells reports on one pediatric researcher who specializes in the impact of hormones on the body, who says it brings significant risks to children.
Kids is a fast-growing medical specialty. In the U.S., dozens of clinics promote a single approach known as gender-affirmative treatment.
And it's just amazing how quickly this phenomenon has kind of arisen, and then how extensive it is. It went from nothing to 45, and they're at the most elite institutions.
And it's catching many parents off guard.
She came into the kitchen one night when I was cooking dinner and just told me, "Mom, I'm transgender. I'm a boy."
The U.S. Professional Association for Transgender Health wrote the U.S. Surgeon General last year, claiming consensus among providers over the treatment. But a small group of pediatricians who specialize in hormones are raising serious concerns. Dr. Paul Ruse is one of them.
We really have no long-term data in using this intervention in children. What we do have are short-term studies that have very serious weaknesses and limitations.
Ruse is a pediatric researcher at the Washington University School of Medicine, who is worried about the long-term health of kids who receive gender-affirmative treatment. The first step, known as social affirmation, can begin as early as 3 years old.
So rather than questioning somebody who asserts a gender identity that's not in agreement with their sex, that one actually supports that individual.
That support can include allowing children to cross-dress, use new pronouns, and enter opposite-sex bathrooms.
The next step, puberty blockers, can start as early as 8. Advocates say they buy time for children to think through changing their gender and help to prevent suicide related to distress around gender. Dr. Rue says that while statistics show this might work in the short term, there's no evidence these blockers curb suicidal thoughts in the long term.
What's most concerning is that if you look at what data is available in these children that are given this gender-affirming approach, that the suicidal ideation remains markedly elevated.
And he questions whether preventing a key developmental stage like puberty is good science.
Maybe the parallel is if a child has a math exam next week and you tell them that they don't need to take it, that's going to relieve their anxiety about the test. But have you really helped that child?
If a child persists in questioning their gender identity, this gender affirmative treatment calls for prescribing cross-sex hormones and even surgery when children reach 18. But studies like this one show that, in fact, surgeons are performing double mastectomies on teenage girls. The combined whammy of puberty blockers plus cross-sex hormones can take a huge hit on adolescent bodies, starting with infertility.
It's expected that the outcome is to result in lifelong sterility. So you're taking away a child's fertility at an age when they really don't have an understanding of what they're giving up.
There's also research that shows increased risk of stroke and metabolic changes that can lead to heart attacks, diabetes, and weakened bones.
Puberty is a very important time for accruing bone density, and that if that is interrupted, the children are going to be at risk of osteoporosis and fractures later in life. And the question that needs to be asked is, if this turns out not to be a good approach, how many children are going to be harmed?
Unbelievably, these medical interventions could be totally unnecessary. Even the World Professional Association of Transgender Healthcare acknowledges research showing that most children with gender issues will outgrow it before adolescence. Just last month, the United Kingdom's National Health Service quietly changed its guidance on these interventions. Little is known about the long-term side effects of hormone or puberty blockers in children. It is not known what the psychological effects may be. It's also not known whether hormone blockers affect the development of the teenage brain or children's bones. The action may have been fueled by the protests at a London transgender clinic. As the Telegraph reports, 35 staff have resigned in the last 3 years, concerned about overdiagnoses of gender dysphoria in kids.
Dr. Ruse acknowledges the tough road that parents of children struggling with their gender face. He encourages them to support their kids and be cautious about the affirmative approach.
They can also consider counseling to understand psychological factors that may be present, or a wait-and-see approach, knowing that their child may outgrow their distress.
Parents often understand. They're looking at the best interests of their children. They know their children. They love their children, and they don't want to do anything, to harm their children. Parents being educated about what is really known and what is not known about this condition and what the alternatives are, I think, can help them in making those decisions.
Decisions that can influence their child for a lifetime. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Still ahead, a look at Clarence Thomas's history on the U.S. Supreme Court and what this justice is really like among his peers and people as he celebrates a birthday and a few milestones related to his career. Stay with us.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
He's the senior justice and most influential conservative on the United States Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas. He just celebrated his 72nd birthday, and it has been a significant year for him, including a documentary on his life. Paul Strand gives us a look at the justice and the man and the influence he's had around him.
For years after his confirmation hearing, Clarence Thomas carried scars from Anita Hill's accusations of sexual harassment. He fought back with history-making fury.
As a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks.
Some assume the experience left him a bitter, unhappy, uninfluential justice. Eric Jaffe clerked for him.
You see these photos of him scowling and looking down, and oh my God, it's this evil person from the right who's going to take away your life.
But those who meet this 72-year-old man of faith, featured in the recent documentary Created Equal, Clarence Thomas in his own words, find this out.
How happy and gregarious and caring a person he is.
When Carrie Severino clerked for him, she saw just how caring.
He would walk around the court knowing everyone's name, from the elevator operators to the marshals to the other justices' clerks to the janitor.
He knew every policeman in the building. He knew the folks who delivered the mail.
His detractors originally considered Thomas just a shadow of conservative giant Antonin Scalia.
The not very smart portion of this duo.
But he's become famous for rulings based on the original meaning of the Constitution.
Scalia characterized him as a bloodthirsty originalist.
Authoring a book on Thomas, Ralph Rosem saw this fierce dedication to figure out the founders' original intent.
What were the ends that they were attempting to achieve? What were the evils they were attempting to avert?
Thomas has faced so much bad press from the liberal media, he no longer lets them influence him.
They're going to hate you because they've already said they're going to hate you. So you're not writing for them anymore.
And his strong stand is making him ever more influential.
The Hill magazine had an article entitled, "Is it now Clarence Thomas's court?"
One writer labeled Thomas the most important legal thinker in America.
He was acknowledging basically that Justice Thomas is the intellectual heavyweight on that side of the courts.
His former clerks see not just his love of the Constitution, but his warmth and wisdom when dealing with everyone around him. Like looking past Jaffe's outer hippie appearance to his inner mind.
I had hair down past my shoulders. He cared about the intellectual part, not about the window dressing.
Severino came to interview for her clerkship with Thomas when she was pregnant and worried that would anger him. Then he said,
"We're here to help interpret the Constitution, and that's here so that you can live a life with your family in peace and in safety. And I don't want to do anything that would undermine that."
And he's funny, like at lunch after Scalia, back at the court, blasted him in a dissent.
Calling Thomas's opinion a liberty-destroying cocktail of arguments. Scalia was looking at the menu and thinking, what drink should I have? And Thomas suggested, how about a liberty-destroying cocktail?
Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Coming up, actor Denzel Washington talks about his faith and how it's grown over the years. Stay with us.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
During a candid conversation on Instagram with Pastor A.R. Bernard, actor Denzel Washington opened up about his spiritual journey and what he has learned along the way. He said after being kicked out of college, he had 3 different encounters with the Holy Spirit that scared him a little. He also talked about a prophecy that he would travel the world and preach to millions. Washington said his road to a deeper faith was not perfect, saying he accepted it, but he wasn't ready to live it in his younger days. Now you can read that full article and watch the interview at cbnnews.com. Before we say goodbye, it is time for your Tuesday Tweetable. It's an encouraging challenge for you today, and I'd love for you to share it with those in your circles. Today, I encourage you to be prayerful, proactive, precautious, and progressive. And of course, you must begin with prayer. With that word, I encourage you to make today a wonderful Tuesday, and a wonderful rest of the week. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. I want to remind you, you can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel. You can find them there at any time. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com. We would love to hear from you. Let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. Feel free to email us at that address right there at the bottom of your screen, newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can always reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We would love to hear from you. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Make it a terrific Tuesday. We'll see you right back here, same time tomorrow. Goodbye, everybody, and God bless.